that the sun shines down its power to all the world and makes the wind blow strong as it will. I wonder how gentle rains can fall upon the land, so lovely earth can stay lovely still.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is a special edition of Energy Week, and we have two guests here, Shavon Prophet and Stephen Sapowski. And I'm glad I was able to remember Sapowski because every time I've said it, I've forgotten where I was going. But anyway, you guys have got technology that's kind of interesting, so I think you should just tell people about it.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you for having us.
Sure.
So we did not invent this technology, but it's been worked on over the past 30 years by a great inventor and engineer in Methuen, Massachusetts on the New Hampshire border. And it is a solar hot air system, so particularly for space heating only. But they've gotten so efficient that one of these panels, you can see one here behind me, can heat over 700 square feet. And when we say that, we mean it could bring up the room temperature 10 to 15 degrees with just one of these.
There are some people in town have these.
There are.
Yes.
There's quite a few people in Vermont. That's one of our
Interesting.
really strong customer bases, because really...
Tom, could we put that on the screen? So what Shavon is talking about is the blue box that's on the left side there, I believe. Is that right?
Yes, that's the blue box.
So, you know, just so people will know what she was referring to when she was talking about the thing that was behind her. Okay.
All right. And then the smaller box behind me, it can be powered by a PV module to power the fan. And so, do you want to go into...
So it powers the fan that
powers
blows
the
the
fan
air
that blows the air
through this and into the house.
Yes.
That's cool. Yeah.
It is cool. It can be closed loop, and most of them are, unless you have a very tight house with a very fancy heat recovery system.
Okay.
But it draws up the cool air through the panel. It's pretty simple. There are a lot of, it's similar to like trom walls in the 1970s that people were experimenting with to warm up the air. It draws it through the panel, heats it up quite efficiently and quickly, and blows it back in using a fan. That draws about, you said your computer there earlier, you said it draws it.
4 watts.
Yes, 4 watts. So I think our fan is, I think it's 9 watts.
Which is practically nothing.
Practically nothing. Yeah.
There are TV systems that have more vampire load than 9 watts. A phantom load that they have because they have to be on so that when you push the remote it comes on. And 9 watts, this is only 9 watts when it's actually running.
When it's actually running.
Right. So there's no load when it's not running.
No, absolutely not.
And
So this is free heat.
Absolutely, it's free. And a lot of the reaction that we get, you know, when we just launched at the end of last year, and even though this technology has been around for decades, and when we're spreading the word, people are like, what do you mean 1/10 of the cost of solar electric and I get free heat forever? Like basically, they're like, well, why have we never heard of this before? And maybe our answer to that is engineers are great at engineering but not promoting.
Well, that makes sense. That's absolutely true. Tom and I are engineers. You'll notice.
Not our job.
Neither one of us is wearing a crown. Okay, so and you said heat recovery. Are you talking about a system where you'd be drawing air from outside the house?
Yes.
Okay. Those can be expensive.
Those can be really expensive.
But very much needed if you're going to be, if your house is very well sealed.
Absolutely, and usually, you know, those particular folks that are building that type of house anyway, maybe they would have a little more to tie one of these systems in, which would preheat the winter air and make that heat recovery system run even more efficiently
Right.
than it was before.
Right.
Well, imagine if you had a well enough insulated house, you could actually heat it completely with this.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
You could heat your
Like a
house with a
straw
hair
bale.
dryer if you wanted to.
Well, that
Yes.
person does that. Yeah, she lives in a straw bale house. Boiling water for tea in the morning heats the house up.
Wow.
And I talked to an architect who said that he had an apartment building in Brooklyn where the heat for the building is the resistance heat floor mats in the bathrooms.
Wow.
And but again, you've got an extremely well sealed building, an extremely well insulated building with a highly efficient heat recovery system built in. And if one of the things that they did, for example, was drawing air into the building. The air is drawn from outside the building, and it doesn't go into the building, it goes down. And it goes through the ground, where the ground heats it before it gets to the heat recovery system in the building. So it's never hit with the dreadfully cold air. And he said also it's filtered to the point where you don't need to dust.
Wow.
That's
some great selling points there, and you will minimize dusting for the life of your system.
That's
I
right.
like that.
Yeah. So tell us more.
Sure. So some folks have had results with these. I do have a slideshow of like an example installation that we'll go through later. So with a well-insulated house with a couple of these, when the sun is shining, you may not have to turn on your main heating system at all. And some folks, particularly in rural Vermont, there are a few customers that have a few of these that tell us that they don't need to turn on their heating system at all when the sun is shining. And it keeps their homes at over 70 degrees, even,
oh my gosh.
Even if it's
that's too hot
20 and below, right? It is kind of hot. That's okay. I mean, you can control it with a normal-looking thermostat.
Yeah.
So you don't have to be boiling, and your house doesn't have to be 90 degrees if you would like it to not be 90 degrees, of course. Stephen, would you like to go through what an example installation entails?
Sure.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So I'll just show you. So it is possible if you have some very basic carpentry skills that you could do this yourself, and maybe some help from your friends, and we'll definitely give you technical support along the way if you're interested in doing that.
I mean, if I wanted to build one of them myself, you'd help me?
I would.
Oh, good.
Maybe not build the system yourself, but we could give you advice if you'd like to mount one of these on your home yourself.
I live in an apartment, so it really would help.
Okay. Well, in that case, maybe not.
So yeah, here's the site that we installed on. It was about a week ago.
Yeah, this was about a week ago.
Right here on this brown wall. That's the south side, and that's where we put the panel. Next.
So you start inside.
Yep.
Of course. Here is the spot here. This was a nice gift shop.
No, they're not going to be able to see the
they don't see
mouse.
the mouse.
Oh, they won't be able to
cursor,
see the
no.
mouse.
Unfortunately.
Okay. So just to the left of that nice armoire cabinet there is where we installed the vents. It was a nice gift shop, so it wasn't the ideal place would be more central, but it would have interfered with their aesthetics.
So yeah, we're just looking for studs and kind of taking notice of the surroundings, making sure. I mean, it's an outside wall, so typically there wouldn't be any plumbing, but just looking for outlets, kind of scoping the area, because once you drill in with a hole saw or a jab saw and you make a giant hole, if it's not in the right place or there's a big pipe or a wire in the way, then now you're getting into repairing drywall and painting. So we really take the most time to make sure that there's nothing in the way when we get set to drill. Mm-hmm. So here I'm just using a circle cutter to get my line, get ready to drill through. And
How big are those vents?
5 1/4 inch hole is what you're going to drill on the inside on the drywall.
So that's you in the picture.
That's me.
Good. You look different from the back of your head.
Right? He cleans up nice.
Ah, there we go.
We got an in and an out.
Yeah, we got
Nice
an in
round
and an
holes.
out.
There you go, yep. So, yeah, we packed as much cellulose to the side as we could, and we pulled some out. We actually saved it to pack back in there so we didn't have any air gaps when we went to install the duct. And then we just basically took the circle, the center of our circle from the inside, and transferred that to the outside wall. We made a little pilot hole on the top and bottom hole, and that's where we came to the outside with a 6-inch hole saw, and we started drilling through that side. You definitely got to be careful with the larger hole saws because it will rip the drill right out of your hand if you're not careful. But
Wow.
yeah, just go slow. So there we are. We have our what we didn't see in these pictures was we have a template that we put up there that's the size of the panel and has holes where the duct holes are. So we traced the template, and from those lines that we traced, we're putting on our bottom bracket, which is going to hold the panel, and then we're going to screw up into the panel from the bottom. That is our, what do you call that? I'm trying to blank.
A vent collar.
There you go, a vent collar.
Yes.
Yep, and we just make sure we silicone the heck out of it on the inside, and then we even throw some extra on the outside and over the screw holes just to make sure that these things are going to be there for 30 years, and we don't even want this with the slightest air gap for air loss or moisture. And then we just have these nifty little expandable high temperature foam gaskets that go on top of those vent collars. They go on, and then once you press the panel onto the area, it smushes up against the gaskets, and it creates a beautiful seal. So there you have it.
Yep.
Ready for a panel. And then that is the panel with the cardboard on top of it, because we wait till the end to take the cardboard off to keep the glass nice and clean and free of any silicone or anything that we use.
Sure.
And yeah, we're probably at this point screwing in from the top and the bottom. There's some pre-drilled holes that the panels come with, and yeah, it looks like it's all set. There you go. There you have it. There's a piece of flashing on the top. It's hard to see, but that's why in the previous picture you could see we removed the piece of siding above the panel so that we could stick some aluminum flashing there and then cover it up with the clapboard. And it's all siliconed in really well. It's very important to make sure that you have a good seal. So, and that's
There's
finished
a
product.
matrix or something in there to direct the air.
There is. There's channels in there.
Channels, yeah.
There's channels in there. And this panel, usually they're mounted vertically, and the heat transfer it has a fan in it, so it'll do it anyway, but it's just more natural, but it'll still operate just fine with a horizontal configuration like this, just depending on how much space you had. These folks, they had a berm for their septic system that was quite high on the other side of this, so we just wanted to mount it like this so they could get as much sun as they could. All right.
All right, here we are. So we're putting the ducts in now, and they're very simple. You just measure the length of the duct that you're going to need from the outside of the drywall to the inside of the plywood or whatever the outside sheathing is, and you cut it. We just cut it with some tin snips. You slide it in. It slips right over the collar on the other side, and you put a couple of screws in each. There's four screw holes on the duct that you can just screw right into the drywall. And then you need to fish we're actually working on this right now. We're working on a remote thermostat device, but currently our system requires a hardwired thermostat to the fan. So basically you just take a wire fish thing and you fish up to the fan, you pull it down as far as you can. If you can get 5 feet away from the supply fan, that's ideal. So it's a really nice clean system. Once you get the little hole drilled, you just send your fish up there and you connect the wire and pull it down through.
In the case of a wireless thermostat, what we'd be mounting here would be the receiver instead of the thermostat itself. Then you could put the thermostat wherever you like, or if you wanted to be a little fancier, it could be like a little remote that you carry around to wherever you like if you wanted to. And here's the final result. It's not, what do you think of how that looks?
You don't even know it's there.
That's really interesting.
Thank you.
You don't know that it's there.
No, you don't. And they were particularly, this is a gallery and a gift shop, so they're very concerned about aesthetics. And when we were done, they said, "Wow, it doesn't even look as bad as I thought it was going to." We said, "Oh, why, thank you. That's what we're out to do, help people get free heat from the sun and not mess up their decorating for the room." So the room has some pretty high ceilings, so we'd recommend, if they didn't have any fans in the room, but we would recommend maybe just some additional air circulation, whatever you can do.
There's Team Greater Good, success.
There you go.
Yes.
Now, Greater Good is in Belchertown, Massachusetts, and your phone number is right there on the screen.
Why don't you repeat it?
Yeah, well, if I could read it, I would.
Okay.
It's 413-992-8010. And of course, that's in Massachusetts. And if I were dialing that from Brattleboro, I'd put a 1 in front of it.
And it's greatergoodenergysolutions.com?
Yes.
Simple
There
enough.
you go.
Yeah.
That makes things easy. How much does a thing like this cost to buy and put in? Is it terribly expensive?
It's not terribly expensive. A standard panel before installations is $19.99.
That's $1,999.
$1,999, 2,000 minus $1.
Yeah.
Yes, that's right.
That's not too bad.
It's not too bad. And something else that's good about it. Do we still have the slideshow up on the screen right now?
The slideshow is on the screen.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Something really great about it is that you can use the 30% federal tax credit.
Right, and that covers the price of the thing you're installing and the installation
And
itself.
installation.
So people should understand that.
Yes.
So you get 30%. How much does an installation typically cost?
$400 to $550.
So we're talking about an amount that a person might be spending that would be well under $2,000 once they get that federal
Oh yes.
Absolutely.
thing back. And this could cut. Do you have an idea of how much this would cut an oil bill or a propane bill or something like that?
We estimate 30 to 40%.
Okay.
Yeah.
So my bill last winter was about $89. So I think I could cut that down to about 55.
Well, it would make more sense for people that have large heating bills, unlike George, who I'm sure is as close to net zero as you can get.
I have my thermostat set rather low, and my suspicion is that if I had this thing in, I would actually cut my heating bill 100% because there would be no need for anything else. And I'd be very happy about that because even though I wouldn't be saving money, I'm not in the business of saving money. I'm in the business of saving the planet.
And you can satisfy both of those needs with a system like this.
Right. And so it would make sense to do this in conjunction with an energy retrofit. If you're planning on doing insulation, you could do this at the same time.
Absolutely.
And if you're well, now what would you suggest? Clearly, this is not going to be the only heating system that an ordinary family, for example, would have.
That's true.
It would. So, what would you suggest for what? Do you have thoughts about that?
Sure. So, mini splits.
I'm so glad. That's the first thing that you come up with is the mini split.
It is. It is. I mean, if you're doing a revamp of your whole house heating system anyway, if you had a mini split and one or two of these, you would be pretty set and very happy with your energy bills.
All right. Now, one of the things that I'm thinking here is that when people buy mini splits, they're usually told you've got to have a backup.
This is true, especially at nighttime, but I've also seen data that the systems, they still, at a certain size, are still pumping heat when it's 0 degrees outside. If you live in a place where...
We have mini splits for sale in Vermont that are advertised as being still producing heat when it's 15 below.
Yes.
But the thing that I was considering here was also when you've got a mini split, you've got something that's dependent on electricity.
This is true.
Now, this particular unit that you've got has a fan.
It does.
What is the solar panel for?
The solar panel is to run the fan, so it can be completely off-grid
So
heating.
the heat can be completely independent of your electric system, and if the electric system goes down, your little heating system just goes like a champ if it's a sunny day.
Correct.
And sunny days are the days when the nights are coldest in the winter.
This is very true, which is why the magic word is also insulation.
Insulation,
Yes,
absolutely.
that's probably
Yeah.
one of the top questions that we get is, does it heat at nighttime? Can I store the heat? And
You can store so much heat in a house
You
if
can.
it's insulated properly.
can.
And especially if you happen to be interested in fish and have aquariums.
Mm.
Yeah, they're good heat sinks too.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah, we've got, where I live, we've got a greenhouse, and we've got 850 gallons of water in the greenhouse.
Wow.
And, you know, our goldfish breed in there. We got goldfish that cost 15 cents each. They were intended to be fed to turtles and things. But, you know, we've got generations of them in there, and they just get better looking every year
Wow.
that goes by. And some of them are 4 or 5 inches long, and they live in these tanks. But the point that I'm making is those tanks regulate the heat in the greenhouse. They prevent it from getting too hot. They prevent it from getting too cold. We have citrus trees growing in there a lot of the year. Bring the citrus in for the two or three worst winter months. But ultimately the point of this is, if you've got a house that has a lot of stuff in it, water, a big stone fireplace is another thing that makes a very good heat sink. You can use that as a heat sink, and you know, my place when I moved into it, there was no insulation, and the folks from Sevka came by and they insulated it, and my landlady put in window inserts, and I have found that I can actually heat the place to a certain extent just by cooking. And you know, if I had one of these things, I have a feeling it would make it uncomfortably warm in there for me.
It might if you left it on full blast.
Yeah.
So you can regulate it.
You can regulate
What
it.
does that mean?
The thermostat just looks like any old simple thermostat.
It's a thermostat.
It's a thermostat. And you set it at the temperature, it'll turn on once the panel is getting a certain amount of heat. It does have sensors inside, and it'll turn off once it reaches the temperature that you set it to.
Okay. Now, if the thermostat is not running, do you have air siphoning through this so that it would deliver a little heat even if you don't want it?
No, it has a flange on it that's sealed. It has like a foam thing that it makes a nice seal. So
So
And the
fan
damper.
has to go in order for this thing to deliver heat to the house.
correct.
Okay.
So it has backdraft dampers that will
Yeah.
close.
Interesting.
Yes.
Okay, so in other words, what we're talking about here is something that actually was engineered by somebody.
Yes.
Yeah.
This is not just a box that
No.
somebody assembled and said,
No.
I want $2,000 for it.
Exactly. So what's really popular I see on the internet is when people are building their own solar heaters with, like, you know, spray painted aluminum cans and things like that. And although it might generate some heat, but you're also connecting your home to a very leaky box.
Right.
Right.
Which means, like a lot of things, and the thing that I think about a lot when I think about this is there are systems that are used for heating houses that actually don't heat them at all. They cool them off. And the decorative fireplace is such a system. A decorative fireplace will heat a house that will otherwise be freezing. But when you're talking about wanting to heat a house that is going to be comfortable for most people, the thing draws more heated air out of the house and throws it up the chimney, and in order to do this, sucks in cold air from outside.
Absolutely.
Cools the house off more than it heats it. And But again, you know, it's such a thing, if you've got it, would be a good heat sink. All you've got to do is close the chimney.
That's true. So it's definitely not something that someone just glued together. These have been engineered. They actually have the highest ratings from the Solar Rating Certification Corporation in the world, and they're made right in Massachusetts.
Highest rating.
Yes.
And what is that organization?
That is the SRCC that does all the ratings for all solar thermal equipment.
Okay.
Internationally.
Okay. And you say this is the highest rating in the world?
For solar air heaters.
For solar air heaters?
Yes.
Okay. So they're not comparing them with solar water heaters?
No.
But do you have an idea of what the efficiency of this is?
The efficiency. Oh, I should have brought the little sheet.
Efficiency is a terrible word. I warn people about it every time.
It is. It's tricky.
It's very tricky.
It's very tricky. It depends on what kind of liquid are you talking about.
That's right, and a bunch of other things.
Yeah.
I had a discussion with a guy years ago who was an engineer at Vermont Yankee, and I said, "How efficient is that power plant?" And he said, "Oh, it's about 35% efficient." That's the way thermal plants are. That's all thermal plants are about that efficient. And I said, "I'm going to disagree with you." And he kind of smiled and said, "You're going to disagree? How is that?" And I said, "Your efficiency is below 1%. And he chuckled a bit, just as Tom is doing right now. And he said to me, "How do you figure that?" And I said, "Well, you're getting 30-some-odd% efficiency out of the heat you create, but you're only using about 2% of the fuel. So you're getting 30% efficiency out of 2% of the fuel. That's below 1%. And he said, "Well, yeah, I suppose."
Got to define your parameters.
You got to define
It's
your
all
parameters.
dependent on parameters.
Yes.
So when we talk about efficiency, we mean the amount of BTUs produced on, there's a category for like mildly cloudy days. So we're not even assuming the most perfect day is the highest of,
right, of course.
anything else that has been tested in the same category.
And, I'll point out, you do get heat on days that are mildly cloudy.
Yeah.
And in fact, one of the things that I just got very recently is a solar cooker from, what is the name of that organization? Solavor. Solavor. I got a Solavor solar cooker, which has reflectors, so that if it's not perfect weather, or if it's winter, you can gather a little bit of extra stuff. And in February, when it was 25 degrees out, I cooked squash and it cooked.
Wow.
And but the thing is, that reflector is not just for winter. It's also for summer days when the sun isn't shining. And if you've got enough sunshine coming through the clouds, or the overcast is not too thick, you can cook with that thing, and your heating system would be able to heat on a winter day when it looks kind of dreary out.
Yes.
But not as much.
Not as much,
Yeah.
but you would still get something. You'd be getting something.
Do you have any idea how much money a person would save putting this in?
Well, we're hiring a consultant right now to help us come up with with nice spreadsheets we can plug in and tell people, because there's so many things it's dependent upon. Like for your fuel source,
Right.
If you're heating with electric baseboard, the most expensive and inefficient type of heating.
I'll disagree with you on that. Just go ahead. I've got a story on that one. Go ahead.
Okay. And you had one of these, and you're cutting your bills from 30 to 50%. That could be
That's substantial.
substantial.
This will pay for itself very quickly.
Very quickly.
Yeah.
Natural gas, not so much, but you probably have values
Yes.
that you'd like to use the least amount of natural gas possible if you have
Absolutely.
one of these.
Absolutely.
And we do have some clients that just like, yeah, my heating bill's not that bad. I hate natural gas. Like, please get me
right.
off of it. So,
Yeah, my heat comes from propane.
okay.
And my use of propane is sufficiently efficient because of the way I live, that when I said my heating bill last year was $89, I wasn't kidding.
Oh, for the whole year.
Yes.
I thought you were like, oh, for a month. And I was like, oh, that's not that bad.
No.
For a year,
And
okay.
the propane company, actually it was a couple of years before that. There was one year when I just said, I wonder what it's going to be like. And of course I was a little desperate for cash, so it was easier to do this. I wonder what it would be like just to leave the heat off for the whole winter. And I did. And it got cold, and on nights when it was cold, I put a 5-gallon pot on the stove and brought it to a boil, shut the flame off, because you don't want a flame going on all night inside your apartment, and put a cap on, and it was still a little bit warm in the morning, and I could keep the place from freezing overnight, even on the coldest nights. And there were a couple of nights when it was below zero, which we haven't had this year so far, and I turned the heat on for those nights. But the problem was that the propane company that I'm dealing with decided that I wasn't worth having as a customer unless I paid them a lot. $5.25 a gallon for propane.
Wow.
When that happened, I, being an engineer, I sat down and said, okay, I'm going to figure out how this compares with electric resistance heating. And at $3.30 or something like that per gallon for the propane, the resistance heating was cheaper, even though I'm buying cow power. That I tell people that's my one luxury is that I have cow power. but clearly, I could use a thing like this to improve the heat in my house. There is only one minor problem with my particular place, which is that there's not a single wall that I've got that's south facing.
That is a very big requirement for one of these.
The main requirement.
The main requirement is that you must have a wall that gets sun and is facing south.
And the problem that I've got, the one wall that I've got that faces south is on a porch, and the porch roof prevents the sunshine from getting in.
Yeah.
But we're thinking about turning that porch into an orangery.
Huh.
You know what an orangery is?
Does it have to do with your citrus trees?
It does. It's a place to put the citrus trees during the winter.
I would be fascinated to see an orangery in Vermont. That would be great.
Well, there are people, aside from myself and my landlady, who grow citrus in Vermont.
Wow.
And it's not that uncommon. But, with a thing like this, one of the things that I've thought, as I kind of reviewed this, and of course, again, there's the one wall that faces south is not appropriate for this, and that is a greenhouse. But I have a funny feeling that you could duct heat into a greenhouse by having an entrance from the east or west side, and have a south-facing wall.
You could.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you needed extra heat in a greenhouse, which sometimes you do in the winter, you could use this for that kind of purpose.
You could. Stephen's family comes from a farm family and has several greenhouses that they heat with oil, and so we're just...
Oh my gosh.
Right. Yeah, they use a lot.
They use a lot of oil.
They don't keep it on throughout the entire winter, but...
What farming do they do besides the greenhouses?
Fruit and vegetables, mostly strawberries, tomatoes, sweet corn, and then the smaller crops like the squashes and beans, cucumbers, pickles, things like that.
My suggestion, tell them to get a cow. They can use the waste from the cow to generate heat and electricity.
Use the cow to generate heat.
Yeah, they could use the cow to generate
Just put
heat.
the cow in the
greenhouse.
Like,
we had a beautiful experiment started in Brattleboro, which unfortunately failed. And I think it was not the engineering that caused it to fail. The carbon harvest, do you remember that, Tom? Yeah. They had capped the landfill, and they were using the methane to generate electricity, but they were using the waste from the generating facility to heat the greenhouse, where they were raising tilapia and vegetables.
wow.
And if you have a greenhouse and you're putting electricity into it and it's heated up above about 45 degrees constantly, you can raise blue tilapia. You can raise at 45 degrees. They won't grow, but they will also not die at that temperature. So they're good for that. And if you have it heated and you have it lighted during the winter for extra light, what I have read is that a professionally operated system, you can get, I think it was 20,000 pounds of vegetables and 10,000 pounds of fish per acre per year.
Oh.
Wow.
Sounds like a lot.
It sounds like a lot.
does.
You're going to have to email me a link about that. I'm really interested to. I've never heard of that project before.
Well, it's called aquaponics, and it's a system where, you know, you raise fish and and
I haven't heard about it on
together.
that scale.
Well, it's
before.
being done on large, and as
That's-
a matter of fact, people are starting to do it in systems that had never been really thought about before. Perch are difficult to raise, but they're very much appreciated for food fish, and there have been organizations that have been doing perch. Another thing is that if you're doing tilapia, you can do freshwater prawns with them. And so you've got the two of those going together. And
Probably do catfish or carp on the bottom.
catfish, carp are not really favored for eating in this country, although they are in other countries.
Never heard of gefilte fish.
Yeah, gefilte fish, yes.
It's carp, yeah.
It's very often carp, yeah. But catfish, yes, people like catfish.
Yeah.
And
They're bottom feeders, so they're not going to bother the tilapia.
And the tilapia breed like a bunch of rabbits.
Mm-hmm.
They're just very, and they're really, they're wonderful fish. We've had tilapia, and they're a lot of fun to see and things like that. But you know, and then one of the things that's interesting about these things is, if you give them a pound and a half of food, they'll make a pound of fish.
Wow.
Wow.
And what do they eat? Well, they eat everything, but that means that you can feed them things like lettuce that you can't sell.
Wow.
You know, things like that. There are a lot of things, agricultural waste that could go in there. But we're getting a little off the subject of the greater good.
Yeah, I would love to bring it back to the greater good.
Okay. What do you do anything besides the thermal air heat systems?
For now, we are not. This is something we're starting with. So we'd really like to promote under-marketed technologies like this that are accessible and simple and can help a lot of people.
Okay.
And why we started this, really, I used to do this with my previous employer, and since
Who is
branched off. I used to work with Co-op Power.
Co-op Power?
Yes.
Which is how I got to know you.
Yes, that's how we got to know each other.
Yeah, that's why I asked, so you would say it rather than me.
And Co-op Power is doing some great things, and we still have a great relationship. and
Good.
we're helping each other. However, we wanted to be able to use this business as an engine to help the greater good and help.
Wow, is that where you got your name?
That is, it is, and particularly when I was with Co-op Power, he's still laughing. Look at him.
That's what this show is for. You know, I
It
say I'm
is.
saving the planet, but really
We're
it's
saving the planet and laughing. We can do it. So in Massachusetts, I know that Vermont has their own energy efficiency program like Mass Save. What's yours called?
Well, we've got a bunch of programs. I mean, are you talking about a state program?
Like a state program that the utilities
You know
are.
what the state program is? I don't
but
remember.
I can't remember.
You know,
the name
we've
of
got
it.
so many
it's
programs
an energy
going.
utility.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
the Vermont.
I can't think of it either.
The Vermont Energy Efficiency Program of some
Vermont
sort.
Energy Efficiency
Yes.
Corporation, I think it is.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and it is called another utility in Vermont because it's producing, it's saving so much power that they're
Wow.
looking at it as a power producing thing.
That's great.
It's really kind of amazing, and you know, again, saving the planet. We're seeing so much of this kind of thing coming forward, But you were saying, go ahead, please.
Sure. So when I was working there, I would help people get their homes, get them an energy audit, help them prioritize what are the steps to help you save them, save the most energy and money. And so I would encounter people so often that were like, I really need help. My energy bills are enormous.
Yes.
And I know my house is poorly insulated, but I'm a low-income person. So that means that you have to go through the federally funded LIHEAP program, get fuel assistance, and then sit on a waiting list for. If you are not an elderly person or have young children, you'll probably be on that waiting list for 6 months to 2 years.
Okay.
Of spending a significant portion of your income just on basic energy expenses, just to keep your heat on.
We have a system in Vermont that I think is significantly better than that. And that is one that has been done by Green Mountain Power, which is 3/4 of the electricity in Vermont is sold through Green Mountain Power, and NeighborWorks of Western Vermont. And they are actually doing this not only with Green Mountain Power, but with the other utilities through the entire state.
Wow.
And basically what happens with Green Mountain Power, I don't know how it works with the other utilities, but with Green Mountain Power, you can go to NeighborWorks or Green Mountain Power, it doesn't matter which you start with, and say, I want a deep energy retrofit. And they will say, sure. And Green Mountain Power will even help you go off grid. You know, and Mary Powell has said this, we'll help people go off grid if that's what they want to do.
That's remarkable.
It is, but you know, what they're doing is they're doing things like selling Tesla batteries.
Wow.
This is a money-making proposition for them. But the thing that Mary Powell has done is that she has figured out how to make this into a money-making proposition. So she can help people. NeighborWorks of Western Vermont, what are they doing? They're financing it. You go to them and you say, this is what I need, you know, and in some cases, people are getting 0% loans, or at least they have in the past. I don't know if that's still available, but the financing is very reasonable rates. They will do the whole thing: insulation, ceiling. Green Mountain Power has helped people get mini splits, helped people put solar panels on their roofs. The whole thing. Now they've got Tesla batteries that they're willing to sell. And if you put $6,500 into a Tesla battery, which can be financed by NeighborWorks of Western Vermont at a very low interest rate, and then you tell Green Mountain Power, sure, you can take power out of there if you need it, just put it back at night. And they will pay you for that power a fixed rate of $30-some-odd a month.
That's remarkable.
And, you know, this is the paradigm that we're working on, and it's a paradigm that I think could be duplicated almost anywhere. But you know,
they're at the leading edge of the curve.
They're at the leading edge of the curve. Yeah.
Well, Vermont is at the leading edge of the curve.
Well,
so many different policies.
I wish it were. I wish it were something that we could just take for granted, but it isn't, because there are people who want to undo all of that, and they're trying very hard to do that.
That's very true.
And in some cases, they're doing it for money. I have no doubt. And in some cases, they're doing it, I think, just because they're mean.
That's the reason behind the climate deniers.
The utility is called Efficiency Vermont.
Efficiency Vermont, that's what it is. Yes, that's
yes,
right.
I couldn't think of it.
Yep, Efficiency Vermont, that's what it is. I'm sorry I misled everybody. I do that a lot, but I try to make up for it by correcting myself when I'm wrong.
So, so I'll get back to the story train. So when I came across so many of these folks that were placed on enormously long waiting lists when they needed the most help, and there's a term for that which is widely known in Europe, in particular the UK, where there's huge mass protests against all of the utility companies, and it's called fuel poverty.
Yes.
When they call it about 10% is the mark. 10% of someone's income goes towards basic energy expenses. And so I started doing some more research on this, and I found there's another solar heating company that makes similar panels to these, although our rating is better.
Her rating is better.
But they're a nonprofit. They're a great organization. They're called the Rural Renewable Energy Alliance out of Minnesota.
Okay.
And they were doing this specifically for low-income folks.
I see. Okay.
So,
and your product is for everybody.
Our product is for everybody, but we're a social enterprise, so we take a percentage of each sale and put that into a fund to help people access the energy efficiency services that they need.
Okay.
And to donate some of these panels. We want to help as many people as possible.
Yeah. When I bought my Solar4 cooker, they were doing a promotion through one of the I think it might have. It wasn't Indiegogo. It was one of those things.
One of the, yeah.
Maybe it was Indiegogo. But if I bought a solar cooker, they would give one to somebody who is currently cooking with an open fire indoors.
And how does that make you feel when you make a purchase that you know is helping someone else?
Well, it didn't make me feel good at all.
No.
Because what happened was I just felt absolutely pathetic about the situation.
Oh no!
I said, I've got to do something about this. And when I buy myself a solar cooker, I say to myself, I should be buying 20 of these things. You know, I should be emptying my bank account to buy these things. But I can't do that. I just can't do it.
Well, that just speaks to
It
the
just shows
quality
what a
of your
bad
heart.
person I am.
Oh no!
Okay, but you know, having cooked squash, which is a pretty easy one because there's not a lot of water in it. Having cooked squash in the winter in Vermont outdoors from the sunshine on a day that did have a few clouds, you know, the idea of giving one of these things to a family, and people don't know. I should mention this. People don't know how many people in this world die from indoor air pollution. They just don't know.
We've talked about it on the show.
We've talked about it on the show, but a lot of people cook on open fires indoors.
Yeah.
Without a chimney.
Without a chimney, it's unvented. Yeah. And the result of that is that about 10,000 people die from this type of pollution.
Indoor air pollution.
Indoor air pollution every day.
Wow.
And they've been doing it for centuries. They don't even know there's anything wrong with it.
That's right. That's right. And about the same number of people die from outdoor air pollution every day. And that, of course, is from burning fossil fuels, mostly coal and gas and oil. I'm not sure. There are other fossil fuels. But
actual fossils.
Actual fossils. Well, I mean, coal is fossils.
Yeah.
But one of the things that was frightening about this, in November we had a terrorist attack in Paris, and that attack lasted 217 minutes. I remember numbers much better than names. 217 minutes, and in 217 minutes, 137 people were killed. During those same 217 minutes, approximately 1,370 people died from outdoor air pollution as a result of the fossil fuel industry.
Now that's an interesting statistic.
That is
We
really...
don't think about that at all.
That terrorist attack killed only 10% of the people who were killed by the fossil fuel industry during the same time. But the fossil fuel industry just keeps killing people day and night, day after day, all year round.
Mm-hmm.
And
nobody notices.
People put up with it because that's what they're used to.
Mm-hmm.
That's really a staggering statistic that you just
10
formulated
times as many
there.
people. It's crazy. Well, I'm full of statistics, you know. Climate change, I called up the World Wildlife Fund and I said, you know, I just see these numbers coming up relating to climate change, and I wanted to know, you know, I called them up and I said, I need to talk to one of your scientists who knows about climate. And I went through to one of their scientists and I said, is this correct? What I'm seeing is, if we don't do something about climate change, we're going to be killing off species at a rate of about 1 every 10 minutes. And if you go beyond that and you say, okay, let's do a moratorium on renewable power in Vermont, which has been suggested, believe it or not.
Yeah, it has.
How many species would die as a result of that moratorium in Little Vermont for just 2 years? And it turns out that it's going to be 20 some odd species would die just because of that one action. And so the point that I'm making is we have to take action on this. We don't have a choice if we want to save the world as we know it. And honestly, you know, I'm very optimistic about climate change. We're going to do it. We're going to stop climate change. But I'm not optimistic about the damage that's going to be done in the process.
This is true. And I mean, you know, these panels, one panel on one house, like it will save some emissions, but what we really hope also is that, you know, even if unless you have the funds to bring your home to net zero, anything you heat your home with, including mini split heat pumps that run off of electricity from somewhere. This is, besides wood, pretty much, but that still has emissions, but this is an off-grid, emissions-free heating system.
Right.
And I don't know of any other emissions-free.
Well, you can do emissions-free heating by doing mini splits that are powered by solar panels.
By solar panels,
and,
true.
you know, if you've got a battery backup, that will work, and it can be an excellent system. And I've read about people who have done exactly that.
Yes.
In fact, I've written articles about people who have done exactly that. And yes, their systems are expensive.
Very expensive.
And they save them a lot of money in the end.
Yeah.
But, and they do save the planet, but we can't all do that at once. No. We don't have enough solar panels for everybody to do that at once, and not everybody can. And if everybody all said, I want to finance a solar system at the same time, the banks would have to say very quickly, I'm sorry, we don't have enough money to service all these requests. And the solar panel companies would say, I'm sorry, we haven't got facilities to service all these requests. Yeah. We've got to ramp up, and that means that it's going to take some people longer than others. I mean, Tom and I have been doing this show for over two years now.
Yeah,
I think this is about today was our 120th or 119th show of news show.
I don't keep track.
Something
it's up there somewhere.
Yeah, and then we've had these specials, and we've probably had 25 or 30 of them. So I go to parties, not that I go to parties, I go to parties and say, I'm a TV producer. I've done 150 hours of television. No, I don't. But the thing is, we've been talking about this for all these years. I still don't have solar panels. Now I'm getting my electricity from cow power.
Yep.
So, you know, I don't feel a pressing need to get solar panels, but I should. I really believe. And in fact, I'm thinking of getting something that's very simple and would serve one circuit in the house, and would have a dedicated circuit that's just on those panels.
That makes sense.
With a battery, so that if I have an electric outage, I'd have enough electricity to run a refrigerator or something like that. And one thing that's really important is a sump pump. But, you know, and a system like that.
It's easy to identify the essential.
Yeah, and a system like that could be.
And you're insulating it from a grid failure.
Right, and a system like that would not cost all that much.
Not at all, right?
Yeah.
People don't normally think of that, you know.
Yeah.
Can have a dedicated solar panel to take care of the very important stuff.
Right.
Like you mentioned, the refrigerator, the freezer, whatever, you know.
Yeah.
The fan on the heater.
Yeah. And the truth of the matter is, with this little computer, I could have my computer too.
Yep. You're little 5 watts.
Yeah, that's right. Yep. So we talked about, you were talking about other things that you would like to do, or other things that you have done. The relationship that you've had with Co-op Power.
Yep.
Tom makes his own biodiesel.
Sort of.
Sort of.
I run my car on vegetable oil in the summer. It's not even made into biodiesel.
So does it smell like French fries? Does it smell like French fries? Is it one of the good smelling ones? Yes! That's something I don't like about biodiesels because it doesn't make me hungry when someone's using it.
Well, but we have other energy options. And you're talking about solar, you know, there are not many places that you can go for solar thermal space heating.
No, there aren't.
But it's a wonderful idea, I think.
Thank you.
And, but I had asked, are you doing other things? Are you going to be doing other things in terms of the...
We just launched, so this is what we're starting and getting off the ground with. Because it needs to get out there, and
Yes.
people need to know about this. If other folks have any ideas for similar technologies, not just for space heating, but for home use, that, you know, similar requirements, that they have to be affordable for people, generally not complicated, and grossly undermarketed. Please contact us and let us know.
And by the way, Tom, could you put that picture back up on the screen? The reason I'm asking you to
which
do
one
that, the
now?
one that's on the, there you go. The reason I'm saying that is because the telephone number, again, is there. It's 413-992-8010, and this is Greater Good Energy Solutions, is that correct? .com?
Yes, sir.
And I actually have a couple, or at
You
least
do?
one that I would mention to you. Yeah, I know a person. How do you feel about wood pellets?
If I know they're up for some debate. I don't. What do you have to say about wood pellets?
I
could
just
look into
wrote an
how are
article
they
about wood
sourced?
pellets.
Yeah.
And that's the question.
That's the question.
How are they
How are they
sourced?
sourced?
Because if you have forest falls, if you've got wood that comes from, you know, road cleanup, things like that, where the wood's got to get removed. And the thing that this brings to mind is an ice storm that they had near Albany, a couple of decades back, and they came up with 50,000 tons of forest falls that had to be removed after that storm, and they didn't have any way of disposing of them, so I think they dumped them in a lake or something. It's really a very sad way of dealing with that. But a lot of that can be turned into fuel. And you know, I wrote an article for Green Energy Times, and what they were saying in you know, one of the sources that I had, who is Andrew Perchlik, who's at the Vermont, I forget what it is, Vermont, I don't know, it's a state agency, and he said if they're sourced properly, if they're transported the shortest possible distance, and if they're burned responsibly in the most efficient way possible, then they're probably carbon neutral or close to it. But if they're being done the way that a lot of them are being done, where you see forest being clear cut in Georgia, and the wood is pelletized and put on a ship and
Shipped to Germany.
shipped to Germany, and some of those ships are so bad in terms of their emissions, it's just crazy. You go to Germany and they're burned efficiently there, I suppose, but that's not carbon neutral. Sorry,
Absolutely not.
But there is a wood stove that I came across that is exciting to me because it does not require electricity.
That is exciting.
Yeah, and I'll put you in touch with a fellow who sells those if you'd like. He's in Keene, and again, I'm not good with names, so I don't remember the name of the store. But he's
Does he make them? Does he design them? Or
no,
he gets
no.
them
This
from
is
somewhere?
this is a design that a guy came up with a couple of years ago, and his name is Pablo Fleischmann.
Okay.
If
An
you can,
assumed name if I ever heard
You
one.
remember that name?
his background is Jewish from Cuba.
Okay.
Wow.
Okay.
There are such things.
Yeah. It's time for us to quit. Sorry, gang. This is the end of the show. Nice to have you,
A little abrupt,
Shavon.
isn't it?
Nice to have you, Steve.
Thank you very much, you guys, for having us.
Oh, sure.
Time flies when you're having fun, doesn't it?
I suppose it does. Bye-bye. Bye-bye,
Bye,
everybody.
everybody.
The earth can stay lovely.
Oh, dear.